The penthouse crowning Manhattan's skyline was a monument to triumph, its floor-to-ceiling windows, framing a city Ethan Caldwell had conquered. But tonight, the air within carried a weight no wealth could lift, a silent, creeping decay that wasn't smelled but felt sinking into the bones. Ethan, a white American billionaire who'd built an empire from nothing, lay in a custom bed of Italian leather and polished oak, his once muscular frame now a gaunt silhouette. At 52, his sharp blue eyes, once fierce with ambition, were dulled by pain and resignation. 6 months ago, the verdict had come. Vance's syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder named for its first documented victim. It was a merciless beast, inflaming his joints, eroding his organs, and defying every treatment. His immune system turned traitor and attacked his body with a ferocity that baffled the world's best doctors. 3 months they'd said, their faces grim, citing the disease's hallmark: unpredictable flare-ups, relentless progression, and no known cure. The machines encircling his bed, heart monitors, IV drips oxygen. Regulators hummed a steady dirge, their beeps a countdown to the inevitable. Ethan's empire, spanning tech, pharmaceuticals, and real estate, churned on below, oblivious to his fate. He'd once thrived on boardroom battles, outsmarting rivals with a mind as sharp as his tailored suits. Now each breath was a negotiation with death. The city's glittering lights mocked him through the glass, a reminder of a life he could no longer claim. His hands, trembling on the silk sheets, clutched at nothing. The doctors had tried everything: steroids, experimental biologics, even unorthodox therapies flown in from Zurich. Nothing worked. Vance's syndrome was a puzzle with no key, and Ethan Caldwell, who'd solved every problem, was losing his final fight. In the stillness, a shadow of his former self stared back from the mirrored ceiling. He'd built this penthouse to celebrate his victories, not to witness his end. Yet here he was, alone, the weight of his billions useless against the disease ravaging him. A bitter laugh escaped his lips, cut short by a stab of pain in his chest. The world he'd mastered was slipping away. All he could do was wait. The soft creak broke the heavy silence of Ethan Caldwell's penthouse door. Aisha Thompson, the new cleaner, stepped into the sterile expanse of the bedroom, her presence as incongruous as a warm breeze in a winter storm. A Black American woman in her late 30s, she carried herself with quiet dignity, her dark eyes sharp with an intelligence that belied her simple uniform. Her braided hair was neatly tucked under a cap, and her hands, calloused from years of labor, gripped a cart of cleaning supplies with practiced ease. Yet something in her movements, deliberate, almost graceful, caught Ethan's dulled gaze. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice low but warm, cutting through the mechanical hum of the medical equipment. She moved to the windows, her steps light on the polished marble floor, and adjusted the heavy curtains. Sunlight spilled into the room, golden rays slicing through the gloom that had settled over Ethan's world. He squinted, irritation flaring as the brightness stung his eyes. "Don't bother," he rasped, his voice brittle from disuse and pain. "I don't need light to die in." The words were meant to wound, to push her away, as he had so many others, nurses, aides, even his closest advisors, who couldn't bear the shadow of his illness. Vance's syndrome had stripped him of patience, leaving only a jagged edge of bitterness. Aisha paused, her hand still on the curtain. She turned to face him, unflinched by his venom. "The sunshine's good for you, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her tone steady, almost defiant. "Even if it doesn't feel like it now." Her lips curved into a gentle smile, not pitying, but knowing, as if she'd seen suffering before and refused to let it dim her spirit. Something about her confidence grated on Ethan, a cleaner, presuming to know what he needed when the world's top specialists had failed. "What would you know about what's good for me?" he snapped, propping himself up slightly. though the effort sent a spike of pain through his inflamed joints. "You're just the help." The insult hung in the air, sharp and deliberate, but Aisha didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze, her eyes holding a spark that made Ethan falter. It wasn't anger or hurt, but something more profound, resolve perhaps, or a challenge. "I know darkness doesn't heal," she replied, her voice soft but unyielding. "And everyone deserves a chance at light." She returned to her work, humming a faint melody as she dusted the bedside table, her movements precise yet unhurried. The soft and rhythmic sound felt like an intrusion, a reminder of life beyond his prison of pain. Ethan wanted to dismiss her, to demand silence, but something held him back. Her unassuming yet magnetic presence stirred a flicker of curiosity in his fogged mind. Who was this woman, and why did she seem so unafraid of the death that loomed over him? As Aisha moved about the room, adjusting pillows and organizing the clutter of medical supplies, Ethan watched her through half-closed eyes. His world had shrunk to this bed, this room, this disease, yet she seemed to belong to a larger one where hope still had a pulse. The thought irritated him as much as it intrigued him. For the first time in months, he felt something other than resignation, a faint, unwelcome spark of interest kindling in the ashes of his despair. The penthouse, bathed in the morning light Aisha had ushered in, felt less like a tomb and more like a stage for Ethan Caldwell's unraveling. His mind fogged by Vance's syndrome, and the cocktail of medications dulling his pain churned with a restless energy. The machines beeped their relentless rhythm, but Ethan's attention was elsewhere, on the empire that refused to let him die in peace. A crisis loomed. A critical acquisition in Tokyo was collapsing, threatening to unravel years of strategic maneuvering. His board demanded his presence, oblivious that he could barely sit upright. "Mr. Caldwell, Marcus." His assistant burst into the room, his usually composed face etched with panic. A wiry man in his 40s, Marcus had been Ethan's shadow for a decade, managing the chaos of his billionaire life. "The Tokyo executives threatened to pull out unless you join the call now. They won't negotiate without you." His voice cracked, betraying the strain of serving a dying man whose empire still demanded his genius. Ethan tried to rise, but a wave of dizziness slammed him back against the pillows. Pain flared in his chest, a reminder of Vance's syndrome's merciless grip. "Tell them I'm indisposed," he growled, frustration boiling over. The world he'd built was clawing at him, even as his body betrayed him. Marcus hesitated, then pressed, "Sir, they'll walk away. Billions are at stake." A bitter laugh escaped Ethan's lips, sharp and hollow. Billions. What did billions matter when he wouldn't live to spend them? His gaze drifted to Aisha, quietly wiping down a glass cabinet in the corner, her movements steady, her humming a faint undercurrent to the room's tension. She hadn't spoken since their earlier clash, but her presence lingered, a spark in the haze of his despair. Her words, "Darkness doesn't heal," echoed in his mind, taunting him with their unyielding optimism. A reckless impulse seized him, born of delirium, defiance, or perhaps the sheer exhaustion of having nothing to lose. He reached for the nightstand, his trembling fingers fumbling for his wallet. He pulled a sleek black card from it, its surface glinting like obsidian under the sunlight. The card was a legend in elite circles, unlimited access to his accounts, a key to his fortune. He held it out, not to Marcus, but to Aisha. "Take it," he said, his voice low, almost a dare. The room seemed to freeze. Marcus gasped, his eyes widening in horror. "Sir, you can't," he stammered, but Ethan cut him off with a weak wave. "I'm dying, Marcus. What's the worst that can happen? She bankrupts me." His laugh was bitter, edged with a manic glee. "I won't be around to care." Aisha stopped cleaning, and her clothes were suspended mid-air. She turned slowly, her dark eyes locking onto the card, then Ethan's face. Confusion flickered across her features, followed by something more profound, caution perhaps, or calculation. "I don't understand, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice measured, betraying nothing. "My black card." Ethan said, his words slurring slightly from fatigue. "Unlimited access. The Tokyo deal needs saving. Buy their damn company, bribe them, do whatever it takes. You think you know what's good for me? Prove it." His challenge hung heavy, a test as much as a surrender. He didn't know why he was doing this, whether it was a final act of chaos or a desperate grasp at the hope Aisha seemed to carry. Maybe both. Marcus stepped forward, his face pale. "Sir, this is insanity. She's a cleaner, not a negotiator. You can't trust her with." Ethan's glare silenced him. "I trust no one, Marcus. Not anymore. At least she's honest about it." His eyes returned to Aisha, searching for a reaction. Aisha's expression was unreadable, her fingers tightening briefly on the cloth before she set it down. She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving the card. For a moment, Ethan thought she'd refuse, walk away from the madness he'd thrust upon her. Then slowly, she reached out, her hand steady, as she took the card from his trembling fingers. Their skin brushed a fleeting contact that sent an odd jolt through Ethan, like a spark in his fading body. He dismissed it as another symptom, but his heart raced. "I'll take care of it." "Mr. Caldwell," Aisha said quietly, slipping the card into her pocket. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held a fire that caught Ethan's breath. "Rest now." She returned to her cart, resuming her work, as if she hadn't just been handed the keys to a fortune. As Ethan sank back into his pillows, exhaustion overtaking him, he watched her through a haze. What had he done, given a stranger the power to ruin or surprise him? In his fleeting moments of clarity, he wondered if this was the most foolish act of his life, or perhaps the first truly alive one in months. Aisha's humming resumed, soft and steady, a melody that followed him into a fitful sleep where dreams of chaos and possibility intertwined. Ethan Caldwell drifted in and out of restless sleep, the hum of the penthouse's medical machines blending with the echo of his reckless wager. Now, in Aisha Thompson's hands, the black card felt like a phantom limb, its absence both liberating and terrifying. Had he just handed his empire to a stranger, or had he, in his delirium, stumbled onto something extraordinary? The question gnawed at him, but exhaustion pulled him under before he could answer. Hours later, a soft knock roused him. Marcus, his assistant, stood in the doorway, his face mixed with disbelief and urgency. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, his voice trembling with something Ethan couldn't place, shock perhaps or awe. "The Tokyo deal. It's done. The executives signed the preliminary paperwork this morning. We didn't just save it. We came out ahead." He clutched a tablet, its screen glowing with documents that confirmed the impossible. Ethan blinked, his foggy mind struggling to process the words. How he croaked, his throat dry. Marcus hesitated, then explained. "Aisha. She joined the video conference in your name and said you were indisposed but had given her full authority. She outmaneuvered them. They offered exactly what they wanted, but with terms that protect our interests in the long term. It was brilliant, sir. The board is stunned." "Aisha." The name hit Ethan like a jolt, sharpening his senses. The cleaner, the woman he'd dismissed as just the help, had negotiated a multi-billion-dollar deal with the finesse of a seasoned executive. His chest tightened, not with pain this time, but with a mix of suspicion and grudging admiration. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Still here cleaning," Marcus said, glancing toward the living area. She acted like it was nothing. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Nothing. No one walked into a high-stakes negotiation and walked out victorious, without training, without motive. Who was this woman? As Marcus left to field calls from the ecstatic board, Ethan's gaze fell on his bedside table. The clutter of pill bottles and medical reports had been cleared, replaced by a single glass of deep purple liquid flecked with specks of green. Beside it, a handwritten note in neat, deliberate script. "Drink this. It may help. Aisha." The liquid shimmered under the soft light, its earthy scent rising to meet him, herbal, slightly sweet, with a hint of something wild, like moss after rain. Suspicion coiled in his gut. Vance's syndrome had stumped the best doctors, their treatments failing to slow its relentless march through his body. What could a cleaner possibly offer that they couldn't? His first instinct was to summon security and have her fired for overstepping. Yet something, curiosity, desperation, or perhaps the memory of her unflinching gaze, stayed his hand. What did he have to lose? He was already a dead man walking. With a shaky hand, he lifted the glass, sniffing its contents warily. The aroma was oddly comforting and grounding. Before he could second-guess himself, he took a tentative sip. The taste was tart, with an underlying sweetness that lingered on his tongue. It wasn't unpleasant, far from it. He drank the rest slowly, half expecting his body to reject it, as it had so many treatments before. But nothing happened. No nausea, no pain. Instead, as minutes passed, a strange warmth spread through his chest, seeping into his inflamed joints. The ever-present ache in his bones, dulled, not gone, but quieter, like a storm retreating to the horizon. Ethan sat up, startled by the ease of the movement. Every shift had been a battle against pain for months, but now his body felt lighter, not healed. Vance's syndrome was too cruel for miracles, but undeniably better. His heart raced not from illness, but from a flicker of something he'd forgotten: hope. The glass sat empty in his hand, a silent testament to Aisha's audacity. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his reverie. Marcus's voice came through, still dazed. "Sir, the board wants to know if Aisha will handle more negotiations. They're calling her a prodigy." Ethan didn't respond, his mind racing. A prodigy? Or something else entirely? He glanced toward the living area, where Aisha's faint humming drifted through the open door. She'd saved his deal, eased his pain, and done it all without a hint of boastfulness. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Aisha Thompson was no ordinary cleaner. As he leaned back against the pillows, the warmth from her concoction still lingering in his veins, Ethan felt a shift deep within. For the first time since his diagnosis, he wasn't just waiting to die. He was curious about Aisha, her remedy, and what she might do next with the power he'd so recklessly given her. And that curiosity, fragile as it was, felt like the first spark of life in a body long resigned to darkness. Once, a cold mausoleum, the penthouse hummed with new energy as Ethan Caldwell sat propped against his pillows, the faint warmth from Aisha's herbal remedy still lingering in his joints. The pain of Vance's syndrome, though not gone, had retreated to a dull throb, allowing his mind to sharpen for the first time in months. But clarity brought unease. Aisha Thompson, the cleaner who'd outsmarted Tokyo executives and eased his suffering, was no ordinary woman. Her actions, too precise, too impactful, demanded answers. And Ethan, a man who'd built his empire on uncovering truths, was determined to find them. Aisha moved through the room with her usual quiet efficiency, dusting surfaces and arranging medical supplies. Her braided hair swayed slightly under her cap, and her dark eyes avoided his gaze, focused on her tasks. The soft melody she hummed felt less like a comfort now, and more like a shield concealing depths Ethan was only beginning to suspect. He watched her, his suspicion warring with a grudging respect. She'd taken his black card and delivered a miracle, but in his experience, miracles always came with a price. "Who are you, really?" he asked abruptly, his voice cutting through the room's stillness. Aisha's hands stilled her cloth, hovering over a glass vial. She turned to face him, her expression calm but guarded like a chess player weighing her next move. "I'm your cleaner, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her tone even almost too perfect. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "No cleaner negotiates billion-dollar deals or concocts remedies that do what yours did." He gestured to the empty glass on his bedside table, its purple residue a silent accusation. "You're not just some hired hand. I want the truth." For a moment, silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Aisha set down her clothes, her movements deliberate, and sat in the chair opposite his bed. Her gaze met his, steady and unflinching, but there was a flicker of something, regret perhaps, or resolve. "My name is Aisha Thompson," she began in a low voice. "That's true. I'm a cleaner now, but I wasn't always." She paused as if choosing her words with care. "I was a researcher at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, your company. I led a team studying rare botanical compounds for immune disorders like Vance's syndrome." Ethan's breath caught a chill running through him that had nothing to do with his illness. Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, a smaller acquisition he'd made 5 years ago, was a cornerstone of his empire, but he'd left its operations to trusted executives. "You worked for me," he asked, his voice tight. "Why are you cleaning my house now? And why didn't you say anything?" Aisha's eyes hardened, a flash of old pain breaking her composure. "Because my research program was shut down 3 years ago without warning. My team was disbanded and our work was buried in archives. When I demanded answers, I was fired. No severance, no references. The industry blocked me. I couldn't get another research job, so I took what I could to survive." Her voice remained steady, but the weight of her words carried years of betrayal. Ethan leaned forward, ignoring the twinge in his chest. "That doesn't add up. My companies don't operate like that." "I'd have known." His tone was sharp and defensive, but doubt crept in. His empire had grown vast, its daily workings delegated to others. How much did he truly know? "Would you?" Aisha asked quietly, her question a blade. "Your empire is massive, Mr. Caldwell. Decisions get made in corners you don't see. Someone wanted my research gone and they made it happen." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "And then I learned about your illness. The symptoms, systemic inflammation, organ stress, unpredictable flares, matched the exact condition my team was targeting. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence." The room seemed to tilt, Ethan's pulse hammering in his ears. "Are you saying someone in my company suppressed a treatment that could have saved me?" The idea was unthinkable, a betrayal that cut deeper than his disease. Yet, Aisha's remedy, its undeniable effect, lent her words a chilling credibility. Vance's syndrome had baffled experts, its origins possibly tied to environmental toxins or genetic triggers, but no cure had emerged. Could someone have ensured it stayed that way? "I'm saying it's possible," Aisha replied, her tone measured but firm. "My program was shut down right when your first symptoms appeared. I came here to find out why and to see if I could help you." She stood, resuming cleaning as if she hadn't dropped a bombshell. "Your remedy," she added, nodding to the glass, "is a simplified version of what we were developing. It's easing your inflammation, slowing the disease's progression. But it's not a cure. For that, I'd need my full research, and it's locked away in your company's vaults." Ethan's mind raced, piecing together fragments. Her expertise explained her actions, the deal, the drink, but her motives remained murky. Was she here to save him or to settle a score? "Why help me?" he demanded. "After what my company did to you, why not let me die?" Aisha paused her back to him, her hands gripping the edge of her cart. When she turned, her expression was softer, tinged with compassion. "Because that's not who I am," she said, "and because my work was about saving lives, not just yours. If I can help you, it proves what they tried to bury. But we need to move carefully. If someone did this to you, they won't be happy you're improving." The weight of her words settled over Ethan like a storm cloud. Betrayal within his inner circle was a possibility he'd never considered yet. It fits the pieces: his illness, her dismissal, the timing. He glanced at the glass, its residue a symbol of hope and danger. "What do you need?" he asked, his voice low, resolute. "Access," Aisha said. "To your company's records, to my old research. But it has to be discreet. A direct move could tip them off." She stepped closer, her eyes burning with purpose. "And you need to keep taking the remedy. It's buying you time, but Vance's syndrome adapts. We're racing against it and whoever else is out there." Ethan nodded, a fire kindling in his chest, not from pain, but from purpose. For the first time, he wasn't just a patient waiting for death. He was fighting to win, and Aisha, this enigmatic woman who'd walked into his life as a cleaner, was his unlikely ally. As she resumed her work, humming softer, Ethan felt the spark of hope grow stronger. But with it came a shadow of fear. If Aisha was right, the enemy wasn't just his disease, someone he'd trusted lurking in the heart of his empire. The penthouse, bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon, felt like a battlefield where shadows held secrets. Ethan Caldwell sat by the window, his body steadier than it had been in months. Thanks to Aisha Thompson's daily herbal remedy, the pain of Vance's syndrome, its relentless inflammation and organ strain, had dulled to a manageable ache. Still, a new torment gripped him, the suspicion that someone in his inner circle had orchestrated his downfall. Aisha's revelation about her sabotaged research at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals had ignited a fire in him, not of rage, but of cold, calculated resolve. He'd built his empire by outsmarting enemies. Now the enemy might be closer than he'd ever imagined. Aisha stood across the room, her cleaning cart a prop she no longer needed, but maintained for appearances. Her dark eyes scanned a tablet displaying encrypted files from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, her fingers moving with the precision of a scientist, not a cleaner. Since Ethan's decision to grant her access to his company's servers, she'd been combing through records, searching for clues about her program's termination. "We need to be methodical," she said, her voice low, steady. "A compliance audit routine and unremarkable will let us pull files without raising alarms. We're looking for who ordered my research shut down and why." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. The idea of a traitor in his ranks, someone who'd suppressed a potential cure for Vance's syndrome, felt like a blade twisting in his gut. "I own the company," he said, his voice edged with frustration. "I should be able to demand answers." But Aisha's warning rang in his ears. A direct move could alert the culprit, whoever they were. Once a source of pride, his empire now felt like a labyrinth of hidden agendas. Aisha tapped the tablet, pulling up a document. Here, she said, her tone sharpening. "A budget realignment from 3 years ago, dated March 15th. My program was one of 4 terminated, all focused on immunology or rare diseases." She swiped to another file, her eyes narrowing. "And this, your medical report from March 10th, showing your first abnormal blood tests. 5 days before my work was buried." Ethan leaned forward, ignoring the faint ache in his chest. The timing was damning, a thread connecting his illness to Aisha's ruin. "Who signed off on it?" he asked, his voice low, dreading the answer. Aisha zoomed in on the document, revealing a digital signature, Nathan Harper, COO. Ethan's breath hitched. Nathan, his right-hand man for 2 decades, the one who'd stood by him through every triumph and crisis. The betrayal, if true, was unthinkable. "It doesn't prove he knew," Aisha cautioned, reading his expression. As COO, Nathan signs off on dozens of decisions. He could have been a pawn or the mastermind. Her pragmatism steadied Ethan, but the seed of doubt had taken root. He thought of Nathan's recent visits. His concern was always tinged with urgency, and his questions about Ethan's treatment were too pointed. Was it loyalty or something darker? Before Ethan could respond, a new voice broke the tension. Uncle Ethan. Olivia, his niece, swept into the room, her bright smile contrasting with the storm brewing within him. Olivia, a young woman in her mid-20s, had his family's sharp features and a warmth that reminded Ethan of his late brother. She'd been abroad, her work in sustainable tech, keeping her away during his worst months, but her return now felt comforting and complicated. "You're looking better," she said, hugging him gently, mindful of his fragility. "Richard told me about your new consultant. Is it true? Are you improving?" Ethan glanced at Aisha, who'd discreetly set the tablet aside. Richard was Nathan's deputy, and mentioning him raised Ethan's guard. "I'm managing," he said carefully, gesturing to Aisha. "This is Aisha Thompson, my health consultant. Aisha, my niece, Olivia Caldwell." Aisha extended a hand, her smile polite but reserved. "A pleasure, Miss Caldwell. Your uncle's making progress, but there's work to do." Olivia shook her hand enthusiastically, her eyes bright with curiosity. "I can't thank you enough. I was so scared I'd lose him." Her sincerity was disarming, but Ethan caught the way Aisha's gaze lingered, assessing. Olivia's arrival, while welcome, added a variable to their delicate game. Could she be trusted, or was she another piece in a puzzle they didn't yet understand? As Olivia settled in, chatting about her travels, Aisha returned to her cart, her movements deliberate. Ethan watched her, his mind racing. The audit was their next step, but Aisha had warned of another challenge. Her remedy, while effective, was only a stopgap. "Vance's syndrome adapts," she'd said, explaining how the disease's inflammatory pathways could shift, rendering her formula less effective over time. A complete cure required her original research data Nathan or someone had buried. The clock was ticking, not just on his health, but on their window to uncover the truth. "We start the audit tomorrow," Ethan said, his voice firm, cutting through Olivia's chatter. "Routine, like you said, but we need more. If Nathan's involved, there'll be a trail, emails, memos, something." Aisha nodded, her eyes meeting his, with a shared understanding. "I'll handle the data pull," she said. "But we need to watch Nathan closely. If he suspects we're digging, he'll cover his tracks." Olivia tilted her head, catching the shift in tone. "Is everything okay? Uncle Ethan, you sound intense." Ethan forced a smile, masking the storm within. "Just business, Liv. Nothing you need to worry about." But as he spoke, his gaze drifted to Aisha, who was adjusting a curtain, her humming faint but resolute. The weight of their alliance pressed on him, a billionaire and a cleaner, bound by a shared enemy and a fragile hope. Nathan's signature loomed like a specter, and with Olivia's arrival, the stakes felt higher, the shadows deeper. As the sun dipped below the skyline, Ethan knew they were stepping into a dangerous game where trust was as scarce as time. The penthouse, once a fortress of control, had become a cage of suspicion for Ethan Caldwell. Each dose of Aisha Thompson's herbal remedy dulled the fiery grip of Vance's syndrome, granting him the clarity to face the chilling truth. Nathan Harper, his trusted COO, might be the architect of his suffering. The audit they'd initiated was a ticking bomb, pulling them closer to answers and danger. Ethan felt it in the air, a storm brewing ready to break. Late that evening, as Aisha reviewed audit files in the study, Ethan's private security system chimed with an alert. Someone had accessed the executive elevator, a privilege reserved for a few. Ethan checked the feed, and his stomach was twisting. "It's Nathan," he muttered, his voice low. Aisha's eyes snapped to his, her tablet set aside. He shouldn't be here this late. I need to go. She moved toward the hidden exit through the bedroom, a concealed door blending into the wall. Be careful what you say, she warned, her voice urgent. We don't know what he suspects. Ethan nodded, arranging himself casually in his chair as Aisha vanished. The door opened and Nathan entered, his salt and pepper hair disheveled, his eyes scanning the room with a flicker of unease. Ethan didn't expect you up, he said, his smile tight. Security said you were awake. Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. Ethan replied, studying Nathan closely. Was that discomfort in his old friend's posture, or was Ethan seeing shadows where none existed? What brings you here at this hour? Nathan pulled up a chair, his movements deliberate. Just checking in. You've been different lately. Stronger. This new treatment of yours, it's working better than anyone expected. His tone was warm, but his eyes lingered on Ethan's steadier hands, his clearer gaze. Ethan felt a prickle of alarm. Aisha's methods are unconventional, he said carefully, but the results speak for themselves. About that. Nathan leaned forward, his voice dropping. I've been digging into her background. Aisha Thompson wasn't just any researcher at Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. Her work was deemed unsafe with unpredictable side effects and insufficient data. That's why her program was terminated. He paused, watching Ethan's reaction. I'm worried she's using you as a guinea pig for something that could do more harm than good. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he kept his expression neutral. Nathan's words sounded reasonable and protective, but Aisha's warning echoed. If he suspects we're digging, he'll cover his tracks. Was this concern, or a move to discredit her? I appreciate the heads up, Ethan said, his tone measured. But I'm sticking with her for now. The audit on Caldwell Pharmaceuticals should clear up any loose ends. Standard procedure. Nothing to worry about. Nathan's reaction was subtle. A tightening of the jaw, a momentary stillness. An audit. He asked, his voice too casual. Any reason for it? Ethan shrugged, forcing nonchalance. Just being thorough. Mortality makes you rethink priorities. Nathan stood, his smile not reaching his eyes. Get some rest, Ethan. I'll see you tomorrow. But tomorrow didn't come as planned. Hours later, Ethan awoke in a haze, his head pounding and limbs heavy. He wasn't in the penthouse. The air was cool, tinged with pine, and the hum of medical machines was gone, replaced by the distant lapping of water. He lay on a narrow cot in a dimly lit room, its rustic walls unfamiliar. Pain surged through his joints, Vance's syndrome, roaring back without Aisha's remedy. His wrists were bound to the cot's frame, the ropes biting into his skin. Nathan stood over him, his face a mask of grim determination. I'm sorry it came to this, Ethan, he said, his voice low, almost regretful. You were supposed to fade quietly. But you're getting better, and that's a problem. Ethan's heart pounded, fear and fury warring within him. What the hell are you doing? He rasped, his voice weak but defiant. Nathan paced, his hands clenched. You don't get it, do you? I've held this company together while you took the glory. 20 years, Ethan, and what do I have? A title, a paycheck, and your shadow over me. When you got sick, I saw a way out, a chance to take what I deserved. He stopped, his eyes cold. I didn't cause your illness. Vance's syndrome was a gift, a stroke of luck, but I made sure no cure would find you. Every promising research program, every potential treatment, I buried them. Ethan's blood ran cold, and Nathan's chilling words confirmed Aisha's suspicions. You killed her work, he said, his voice trembling with rage. Aisha's research could have saved me. Nathan laughed, a bitter sound. Aisha's a ghost from the past, a mistake I thought I'd erased. Her showing up here healing you forced my hand. Ethan struggled against the ropes, pain flaring with each movement. You won't get away with this, he spat. Aisha knows. She has evidence. Nathan's smile was cruel. A disgraced researcher with a vendetta. No one will believe her over me. I've been your right hand for decades. And you, Ethan, you're terminal. No one will question a sudden decline. Nathan held up a syringe, its contents glinting in the dim light. Just a sedative, he said, his voice calm, to keep you comfortable while the disease does its work. Without Aisha's concoction, your symptoms will consume you in days. Ethan's vision blurred, his strength fading, but his mind clung to Aisha's face, her resolve. She'd find him. She had to. Meanwhile, Aisha and Olivia stood in the study room in the penthouse, with papers scattered, and Ethan's laptop open to a file on Nathan's approval. Ethan was gone and his phone was left behind. He found something, Aisha said, her voice tight, pointing to a document detailing Nathan's role in burying research. And Nathan took him. Olivia's face paled, but her eyes burned with determination. We need to find them. Now. Aisha's mind raced, piecing together clues. Nathan needs somewhere private, controllable. Somewhere Ethan's absence won't be noticed. Olivia's eyes widened. The lake house. Upstate, 2 hours away. It's isolated and used for family retreats. Nathan knows it from corporate events. Aisha nodded, her jaw set. That's where they are. We go now. As they hurried to Olivia's car, Aisha clutched her bag containing a more potent dose of Ethan's remedy. Without it, Vance's syndrome would reclaim him, its inflammatory pathways surging unchecked. Olivia drove, her knuckles white on the wheel, while Aisha's calm exterior masked a storm of fear and resolve. Nathan's betrayal was apparent, but his desperation made him unpredictable. The lake house loomed in their minds, a place of answers and danger, where Ethan's life and their truth hung in the balance. The night was a shroud over the upstate lake house, its isolated silhouette framed by towering pines and the glassy water ripple. Inside, Ethan Caldwell lay bound to a cot, his body a battleground where Vance's syndrome raged unchecked. Without Aisha Thompson's remedy, the disease's inflammatory fury had returned joints, screaming lungs, laboring each breath a knife in his chest. The ropes on his wrists chafed raw, but his strength was fading, sapped by pain and the sedative Nathan Harper had forced into his system. Nathan stood nearby, his face a mask of cold resolve, the syringe now empty, but its threat lingering in Ethan's blurred vision. You can't win this, Nathan. Ethan rasped, his voice weak, but laced with defiance. Aisha's coming. She'll expose you. His words were a lifeline, a tether to hope, as his body betrayed him. Nathan's laugh was sharp, cutting through the dim room. Aisha. She's nothing. A disgraced scientist with no credibility. I've built your empire's trust for decades. This ends with you. Ethan and I walk away clean. Outside, Aisha and Olivia crept through the woods, their breaths misting in the chilly air. Aisha clutched a small container of a double-strength remedy, its deep purple contents, the only thing between Ethan and death, her face set with determination. Olivia led the way to the boathouse, a hidden entry she'd used as a child to sneak out during family retreats. There's a passage to the main house, she whispered, retrieving a spare key from under a loose board. We'll hear them before they see us. The boathouse door creaked open, revealing a narrow tunnel smelling of damp wood and earth. Aisha's heart pounded, but her mind was a steel trap calculating every move. Vance's syndrome was relentless. Without her remedy, Ethan's immune system would spiral, inflaming his organs to failure within hours. She and Olivia moved silently, the faint sound of voices growing clearer as they neared the main living area. Nathan's authoritative tone cut through, chilling Aisha's blood. No one will question a terminal man's decline. He said, his words a death sentence. Aisha motioned for Olivia to stay low, peering through a crack in the passage wall. Ethan was slumped on the cot, pale, and sweating, his eyes half open, but fierce. Nathan loomed over him, checking his watch as if timing Ethan's demise. Aisha's grip tightened on the remedy. They needed a plan fast. She turned to Olivia, whispering, "I need to get to Ethan with the medicine. Can you distract Nathan?" Olivia nodded, her eyes blazing with resolve. Without hesitation, she stepped out from the passage, striding into the room with a boldness that belied her fear. "Hello, Nathan," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Looking for me, too." Nathan spun around, shock flashing across his face. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" His hand tightened on the syringe's empty case, his composure cracking. "Saving my uncle," Olivia replied, her tone unflinching. "Did you think I wouldn't figure it out?" She stepped forward, drawing Nathan's attention, her voice rising. "You tried to kill him for power. It's not complicated." As Nathan focused on Olivia, Aisha slipped from the passage, moving silently along the room's edge. Her eyes met Ethan's, a fleeting connection that sparked relief in his pained gaze. She crouched beside him, her fingers working quickly to untie the ropes. "I've got you," she whispered, her voice a lifeline. "Double-strength remedy. Drink it now." Ethan nodded weakly, his trembling hands accepting the small vial she pressed to his lips. The tart, earthy liquid slid down his throat, its warmth spreading like a counterfire to the disease's blaze. Nathan's voice grew sharper, his patience fraying as he advanced on Olivia. "You're making a mistake, Olivia. You don't understand what's at stake." Olivia backed away, her eyes darting to Aisha's progress, keeping Nathan engaged. "I understand perfectly," she countered. "You betrayed the only family I have left. For what? A corner office." Aisha freed Ethan's wrists, her heart racing as she helped him sit up. The remedy was working. His breathing steadied color, creeping back into his ashen face, but he was still weak. She scanned the room, spotting a heavy iron bookend on a nearby shelf. Nathan's voice rose, his anger boiling over. "You'll regret this, Olivia. No one will believe your story over mine." He took a step toward her, his posture menacing. Aisha stood, her voice cutting through the room like a whip. "It won't just be her story, Nathan. It'll be mine, Ethan's, and the evidence we've secured from your files." Nathan whirled, his face contorting with rage as he saw Aisha beside Ethan. "You!" he snarled, lunging toward them, the syringe case raised like a weapon. But Olivia was faster. She grabbed the bookend and precisely swung it, striking Nathan's arm. The case clattered to the floor, and Nathan stumbled, clutching his injury. "You ungrateful!" he began. But Ethan rose from the cot, fueled by the remedy's surge and years of buried strength. His fist connected with Nathan's jaw in a solid, satisfying crack. Nathan collapsed unconscious, the room falling silent, save for the lake's distant lapping. "That felt good," Ethan said, shaking out his hand, his voice hoarse but steady. Aisha checked Nathan's pulse, and her fingers were steady despite the adrenaline. "He's out but alive," she said, relief softening her tone. Olivia, panting, grabbed a coil of rope from the boathouse stash. "Let's tie him up before he wakes." As Olivia secured Nathan, Aisha turned to Ethan, her eyes searching his. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but urgent. Ethan managed a weak smile, the remedy's warmth anchoring him. "Thanks to you," he said, his hand brushing hers, a fleeting touch, heavy with gratitude. "You came for me." "Of course," Aisha said, her gaze unwavering. "We're in this together now." The weight of their alliance, forged in betrayal and survival, settled between them. Olivia returned, her face a mix of relief and resolve. "We need to call the authorities," she said, pulling out her phone. "And get you back to the city, Uncle Ethan. You need more of that remedy." As they prepared to leave the lake house, the night outside felt less oppressive, the stars piercing the darkness like promises. Ethan leaned on Aisha, his strength returning, but his mind racing. Nathan's betrayal had been exposed, but the fight wasn't over. Aisha's research, the key to a cure, was still out there, and the truth about Caldwell Pharmaceuticals loomed larger than ever. For now, though, they'd won this battle together. The penthouse, bathed in the pale light of dawn, felt like a sanctuary reclaimed. Ethan Caldwell sat at the dining table, his hands steadier than they'd been in months, the lingering warmth of Aisha Thompson's double-strength remedy anchoring him against the previous night's storm. Vance's syndrome, with its brutal inflammation and organ stress, had retreated under the remedy's influence, granting him a clarity that sharpened his resolve. Nathan Harper, his once trusted COO, was in custody facing charges of attempted murder and corporate fraud after his chilling confession at the lake house. But the victory was bittersweet. Nathan's betrayal had exposed a rot in Ethan's empire, and the fight for a cure was far from over. Aisha stood across the room, no longer a cleaner, but a scientist in her element, organizing a stack of research notes recovered from the audit. Her braided hair was free of the cap, framing her face with quiet strength as she reviewed data on her tablet. Olivia, Ethan's niece, sat beside him, her eyes scanning a police report detailing Nathan's arrest. The trio was a makeshift war council bound by the chaos they'd survived and the purpose that now drove them. The audit confirmed everything Olivia said, her voice steady but tinged with anger. Nathan systematically shut down research that could have treated your condition, yours, Aisha's, and 3 other programs, all within days of your first symptoms. She slid a document across the table, its pages marked with Nathan's digital signature. He admitted it during interrogation. He didn't cause Vance's syndrome, but ensured no cure would reach you. Ethan's jaw tightened, the sting of betrayal still raw. He played the long game, he said, his voice low. 20 years by my side, and I never saw it. He thought of Nathan's confession, the resentment, the ambition fueled by years of feeling overshadowed. A hidden gambling debt uncovered in the audit had pushed him to desperation, but it was his hunger for control that had turned him into a monster. Aisha looked up from her tablet, her dark eyes meeting Ethan's. He panicked when you started improving, she said, calm but resolute. Your recovery threatened everything he'd planned. She tapped the screen, pulling up Ethan's latest blood work. Your inflammation markers are down 20% since the double dose. The remedy's working better than I expected, but it's not a cure. It's managing symptoms and slowing the disease's progression. We need my full research to finish this. Ethan nodded, his gaze lingering on her. Once buried by Nathan's sabotage, Aisha's expertise was now his lifeline. Her remedy, derived from rare botanical compounds, targeted the inflammatory pathways of Vance's syndrome, but its temporary nature was a constant reminder of the race against time. What do you need? He asked, his voice firm. Name it. A lab, Aisha said without hesitation. A team I can trust, access to my old data and resources to source the plants I used. Some are only found in remote regions. Nathan locked my research in Caldwell Pharmaceuticals' vaults, but with him gone, we can retrieve it. She paused, her expression softening. And we need to think bigger. Your recovery could prove my work's value not just for you, but for millions with similar immune disorders. Ethan leaned back, a spark of his old ambition reigniting. Then we build something new, he said. A research institute, independent but funded, focused on your botanical methods. The Thompson Institute for Botanical Medicine. Aisha's eyes widened, a flicker of surprise breaking her composure. You'd name it after me, she asked softly. Why not? Ethan replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. It's your vision. I'm just the one with the checkbook. Olivia grinned, her enthusiasm cutting through the room's tension. It's perfect. A place where science and tradition meet, where no one like Nathan can bury the truth again. But the path wasn't clear. As news of Nathan's arrest and Ethan's recovery spread, the public's fascination grew, amplified by media headlines. Billionaire's miracle cure cleaner, or con artist. The medical community, skeptical of Aisha's unorthodox methods, issued cautious statements and warned of untested treatments. Rival pharmaceutical companies, sensing a threat to their dominance, began whispering doubts, their lobbyists questioning the legitimacy of her work. Ethan felt the weight of these challenges, but Aisha's resolve steadied him. "Let them talk," she said, her voice unwavering. "The results will silence them." Olivia flipped through a news app, her brow furrowing. "The press is digging into your past, Aisha. They're calling your dismissal from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals a red flag. We need to control the narrative." Aisha nodded, unfazed. "We will once we have the cure. For now, we focus on Ethan and the Institute." Ethan watched her, marveling at her strength. She'd walked into his life as a cleaner, armed with knowledge and determination, and now she was reshaping his world. But beneath his admiration, a question lingered. Why risk so much for him? "After what my company did to you," he said, his voice low. "Why fight this hard? You could have walked away." Aisha met his gaze, her expression a mix of resolve and vulnerability. "Because I believe in the work," she said. "It's bigger than me, bigger than you. My grandmother taught me these remedies passed down through generations. She said healing is about giving hope, no matter the cost. Helping you proves they couldn't break me." She paused, her voice softening. "And maybe, just maybe, I saw something in you worth saving." The words hit Ethan like a quiet thunder, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years. He thought of the lake house, her hand steadying him as she administered the remedy, her voice pulling him back from the edge. Their alliance, born of necessity, was becoming more profound, a partnership forged in survival and shared purpose. Olivia cleared her throat, a knowing smile on her lips. "I'll start coordinating with the legal team to secure the Institute's funding," she said, standing. "You two keep saving the world." She left the room, leaving Ethan and Aisha in a charged silence. "We're not done yet," Aisha said, breaking the moment. "Nathan's gone, but his allies might still be in your company. And the cure, it's close, but it'll take everything we've got." Ethan nodded, his eyes locked on hers. "Then let's get to work," he said, his voice steady, with a fire he hadn't felt since before his diagnosis. "I'm not dying yet." As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the penthouse, Ethan felt a shift. The betrayal had wounded him, but it had also awakened him. With Aisha by his side and Olivia's fierce loyalty, they were building something unstoppable, a legacy that would outlast Nathan's treachery and the world's doubts. The Thompson Institute was their answer, a beacon of hope in a beginning battle. Awash in the golden hues of late afternoon, the penthouse felt like a crucible where past wounds and future hopes were forged into something new. Ethan Caldwell stood by the window, his silhouette stronger than it had been in months, thanks to Aisha Thompson's relentless herbal remedies. With its vicious inflammatory surges, Vance's syndrome was held at bay, granting him physical relief and a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, as he gazed at the city below, a quiet ache lingered, not from the disease, but from the realization that his life, once defined by power and isolation, was being reshaped by the woman who'd walked into it as a cleaner. Aisha sat at the dining table, surrounded by research notes and a laptop displaying blueprints for the Thompson Institute for Botanical Medicine. Her braided hair caught the sunlight, and her dark eyes burned with focus as she outlined plans for a state-of-the-art lab. The institute was taking shape, a 50-acre campus outside New York, blending cutting-edge facilities with botanical gardens to grow rare medicinal plants. But the path was fraught. Media scrutiny had intensified, with headlines like "Billionaire's Mystery Healer Savior" or "Scam Fueling Public Fascination and Skepticism." Sensing a threat, rival pharmaceutical giants had begun funding smear campaigns, questioning Aisha's credentials and the safety of her methods. Olivia, Ethan's niece, paced nearby, her phone buzzing with updates from the Institute's legal team. The press is relentless, she said, her voice tight. They're digging into Aisha's dismissal from Caldwell Pharmaceuticals, spinning it as proof she's untrustworthy. And I just got word NextGen Biotech, one of our competitors, is lobbying regulators to block our clinical trials. She tossed her phone onto the table. Frustration etched on her face. They're scared we'll upend their market. Aisha didn't look up, her fingers tapping steadily on the laptop. Let them try, she said, her tone calm but steely. The truth is in the results. Ethan's blood work doesn't lie. She slid a report across the table, detailing a 25% reduction in his inflammation markers since the lake house rescue. We're close to a breakthrough, but we need those trials to prove it, not just for Ethan, but for everyone with conditions like Vance's syndrome. Ethan turned from the window, his gaze settling on Aisha. Her resilience in the face of attacks was quiet, like a river carving through stone. He'd seen her at the lake house, risking everything to save him. Her hands steady as she administered the remedy that pulled him back from the brink. That moment had shifted something in him, a crack in the walls he'd built around his heart. You're not just fighting for me, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. You're fighting for everyone. Why take on the world like this? Aisha paused, her hands stilling on the keyboard. She met his gaze, her expression a blend of determination and vulnerability. Because I've seen what happens when hope runs out, she said. My grandmother lost her sister to a disease no doctor could name. She taught me these remedies to make sure no one else had to feel that loss. When Nathan buried my work, he didn't just take my career. He took that hope from countless people. I won't let him win. The weight of her words settled over Ethan, stirring memories of his despair, the months when Vance's syndrome had stripped him of everything but resignation. Aisha had given him back his life, not just with her medicine, but with her unyielding belief in something greater. He crossed the room, sitting opposite her, his eyes searching hers. You could have demanded anything from me, he said. With the black card with my recovery. Why ask for an institute for a chance to help others when you could have taken so much more? Aisha's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Because that's not who I am, she said softly. And because I saw you, Ethan, not the billionaire, not the empire, but the man who gave a stranger a chance when he had nothing to lose. That's worth more than money. Her words hung between them, bridging the chasm of their different worlds. Olivia, sensing the shift, cleared her throat. I'll check on the zoning permits for the institute, she said, grabbing her phone with a playful smirk. You two, carry on. She slipped out, leaving a charged silence in her wake. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Isha, what we've been through, the lake house. Nathan, this fight, it's changed me. You've changed me. He hesitated, the vulnerability unfamiliar but undeniable. I don't just want you as my healer or partner in this institute. I want you in my life in every way that matters. Aisha's breath caught her eyes, softening warmly, making Ethan's heart race. Ethan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This started as a mission to prove my work to save you. But somewhere along the way, it became more. She reached across the table, her hand resting lightly on his. I feel it too, but the world's watching, and we've got a cure to finish. Can we do this, us, and still win this fight? Ethan's hand closed over hers, the contact grounding him. We can, he said, his voice steady with conviction. We've faced worse than skeptics and rivals. Together, we're unstoppable. The words were a vow to their shared mission and the unspoken possibilities blooming between them. Before Aisha could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent alert. She glanced at the screen, her expression tightening. It's the audit team, she said, returning her hand to open the message. They found something else, a second set of approvals from Nathan tied to NextGen Biotech's acquisition. It wasn't just about burying my research. They were redirecting funds to a rival project that stalled out years ago. Her eyes met Ethan's, a storm brewing within them. Nathan wasn't working alone. Ethan's jaw clenched, the specter of further betrayal looming. "Then we dig deeper," he said, his voice hard. "Whoever's behind this will find them." Olivia re-entered, catching the tail end of the conversation. "More enemies?" she asked, her tone grim but resolute. "Good thing we're getting used to this." As the trio regrouped, plotting their next move, the city skyline glittered beyond the penthouse, a reminder of the world waiting to judge them. The Thompson Institute was more than a dream. Now it was a battleground where Aisha's science, Ethan's resources, and Olivia's loyalty would face their most significant test. But at that moment, as Ethan looked at Aisha, her hand still warm from his touch, he felt something more substantial than fear, a love rooted in shared struggle, a purpose that could change everything. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, he believed they could win it together. The Thompson Institute for Botanical Medicine gleamed under the morning sun, its modern glass and steel structure rising from lush gardens where medicinal plants from across the globe took root. May 25, 2025, marked its grand opening, a moment that transformed a dream into reality. The campus, sprawling across 50 acres just outside New York, buzzed with activity, media crews setting up cameras, researchers mingling with dignitaries, and patients whose lives had been touched by Aisha Thompson's early trials gathering in quiet hope. But beneath the celebration, tension ran deep as Ethan Caldwell and Aisha faced a world eager to judge them. Ethan stood in the Institute's central atrium, his tailored suit a far cry from the hospital gowns of months past. Aisha's remedies had tamed Vance's syndrome, reducing its inflammatory assaults to a whisper, though the disease still lurked, demanding daily vigilance. His blue eyes scanned the crowd. Health ministers, Nobel laureates, skeptical doctors each face a reminder of the stakes. The Institute wasn't just a research hub, but a challenge to a medical establishment that dismissed Aisha's methods as folklore. And with next-gen biotech's smear campaigns intensifying, whispers of sabotage hung like a storm cloud. Aisha, now Dr. Thompson, stood in her office, smoothing the deep green dress that hugged her frame. Its elegance, a quiet defiance of the cleaner's uniform she'd once worn. Her braided hair was swept up, and a small leaf-shaped charm, Ethan's gift, a nod to her grandmother's remedies, rested against her collarbone. She studied her reflection, the weight of the moment pressing on her. "I'm not used to this," she admitted to Olivia, who leaned against the doorframe, polished in a tailored suit. "All these eyes expecting me to prove everything in one speech." "You're Dr. Aisha Thompson," Olivia said, her voice firm, a smile softening her words. "You've already proven it to Uncle Ethan, to me, to every patient whose life you're changing. You belong up there." She adjusted Aisha's necklace, her eyes twinkling. "And you look like you were born for this." Aisha managed a small laugh, but her nerves lingered. The Institute's first trials had shown promise, reducing symptoms in dozens of patients with immune disorders like Vance's syndrome. But next-gen's lobbying had delayed approvals, and media headlines, miracle or mirage, cast doubt on her credibility. She thought of the lake house Nathan's betrayal, and the audit's latest revelation, his ties to next-gen, suggested a broader conspiracy. Today wasn't just a celebration. It was a battle. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his presence steadying her. Nervous, he asked, his voice warm, his eyes tracing her with quiet admiration. Terrified, Aisha admitted, her smile wry. "Like I'm standing on the edge of something massive." Ethan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "You've been here before," he said softly, "when you took my black card and saved me at the lake house. Courage is your specialty." His words grounded her, a reminder of their journey. She squeezed his hand, the leaf charm cool against her skin. "Will you be up there with me?" she asked. Every step Ethan promised. "But this is your moment, Aisha. The world needs to see your vision, not just my money." Their eyes held a silent vow of professional and personal partnership, forged in struggle and trust. A chime signaled 10 minutes until the ceremony. Aisha took a deep breath, steeling herself. But Olivia's phone buzzed with an urgent message before they could leave. Her face paled as she read it. Security just intercepted a package at the gate. She said, her voice low. "Unmarked, containing vials labeled as experimental compounds. The note claims they're from us, meant to discredit our trials." Aisha's stomach dropped. "Next gen," she said, her voice hard. "They're trying to frame us for fraud." Ethan's jaw clenched, his mind racing. "Get it to the lab for analysis," he ordered Olivia. "And tighten security. No one gets near the ceremony without clearance." Olivia nodded, already dialing the security team, her efficiency mirroring Ethan's old decisiveness. Aisha's eyes met Ethan's, a storm of determination in her gaze. "They won't stop us," she said. "Not today." The auditorium was filled with expectant faces as Ethan took the stage, his voice steady, and he introduced Aisha. "Dr. Aisha Thompson didn't just save my life." He said, his words carrying across the room and the global live stream. "She's redefining medicine, blending ancient wisdom with modern science. This institute is her vision, a place where hope isn't a luxury, but a right." Applause erupted, but Ethan caught the skeptical glances of some doctors, their arms crossed, and the probing lenses of media cameras. Aisha stepped to the podium, her heart pounding, but her voice clear. She spoke of her grandmother's remedies, plants with untapped healing potential, and her journey from researcher to cleaner to scientist again. She shared early trial results, patients with reduced symptoms, some walking again after years of pain, carefully framing Ethan's recovery to protect his privacy. "The Thompson Institute isn't here to replace medicine," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "It's here to expand it, to give hope where none existed." The audience leaned in, captivated, but Aisha felt the weight of unseen enemies. Next-gen's sabotage attempt was intercepted in time, and they were warned of their desperation. As she concluded, calling for collaboration with global researchers, the room erupted in applause. Though some doctors remained reserved, their murmurs reminded of the battle ahead. Ethan joined her for the ribbon cutting, their hands together on the oversized scissors cameras, flashing to capture the moment. He leaned close under the Institute's logo, a plant cradled in cupped hands, whispering, "We did it." Aisha smiled, her heart swelling, but her eyes caught a figure in the crowd, a man in a suit, his face obscured, slipping out early. Her gut twisted. "Not over yet," she murmured back. As the ceremony ended, a researcher rushed to Aisha with a lab report. "The vials from the package," he said, breathless. "They're laced with a toxin designed to mimic your compounds but cause harm. If they'd reached the trials." Aisha's blood ran cold, Ethan's hand tightening on hers. "Next gen's playing dirty," he said, his voice low, fierce. "We'll fight back harder." The gardens outside glowed in the fading light, their plants a symbol of resilience. Aisha and Ethan stood together, the crowd dispersing, Olivia coordinating with security. The institute was launched, its promise radiant, but the shadow of sabotage loomed. Their love, mission, and fight were all intertwined now, a beacon against the gathering storm. As they faced the world hand in hand, Aisha knew this was only the beginning. 5 years had transformed the Thompson Institute for Botanical Medicine into a beacon of innovation, its gardens now a vibrant tapestry of medicinal plants stretching across the 50-acre campus outside New York. On this crisp spring morning in 2030, The Institute's central courtyard was alive with celebration, not just for its 5th anniversary, but for a deeply personal milestone. Now bound by love and shared purpose, Ethan Caldwell and Aisha Thompson stood beneath an arch woven with healing herbs, ready to renew their wedding vows before a gathering of family friends and those whose lives their work had touched. The Institute had grown beyond their wildest dreams. What began as a single research building had expanded into a global hub, laboratories humming with discoveries, treatment centers offering hope to thousands, and educational programs training a new generation of healers. Patients worldwide flocked to its clinics, and their immune disorders like Vance's syndrome were tamed by Aisha's groundbreaking formulas. The medical community, once skeptical, now collaborated with top researchers, citing the Institute's trials as a turning point in integrative medicine. Next-gen biotech sabotage attempts, exposed after the intercepted toxin vials, had crumbled under public scrutiny, and their executives faced legal repercussions. His health was fully restored. Ethan stood tall in a dark suit, his blue eyes bright, and he had a vitality that had seemed impossible 5 years ago. Aisha's enhanced formula, perfected after relentless trials, had eradicated Vance's syndrome from his body, leaving no trace of the disease that once threatened his life. Yet as he adjusted his tie, a nervous energy betrayed him more like a groom on his wedding day than a man married for 3 years. "Do I look all right?" he asked Dr. Martin Chin, the Institute's director of clinical research, who stood beside him chuckling. "You've asked that 6 times, Martin teased, clapping Ethan's shoulder. "Aisha will be as smitten as she was at your first wedding." Ethan grinned, his gaze sweeping the crowd, researchers from Aisha's old team, now leading Institute departments. Patients walking unaided, their smiles a testament to her work. And colleagues who'd once doubted but now partnered with them. At the heart of it all was their family, a miracle Ethan had never dared imagine during his darkest days. Near the front row, their 2-year-old daughter Lila fidgeted on Olivia's lap, her dark curls adorned with a flower crown. Already, she showed Aisha's gentle determination, pointing at plants with a toddler's curiosity. Beside them, 6-month-old Theo, named for Aisha's grandfather, who'd inspired her grandmother's remedies, cooed in the arms of Aisha's trusted assistant. The children were the next chapter of their legacy, blending Ethan's resilience and Aisha's compassion. Aisha appeared at the garden path's end, radiant in a simple white dress, Lila now holding her hand. The crowd hushed, and Ethan's breath caught as it had 3 years ago in this same garden during their quiet first wedding. Aisha's eyes, warm and unwavering, met his, and Lila broke free, toddling to Ethan with a gleeful, "Daddy flowers." He scooped her up, kissing her cheek. "Beautiful, just like you and Mommy," he said, setting her down to rejoin Olivia. Aisha reached him, her hand slipping into his, the leaf charm necklace, his gift from the Institute's opening, glinting at her throat. "Ready to do this again?" she asked, her voice soft, a smile playing on her lips. "With you, always." Ethan replied, his heart full. The ceremony was intimate, their renewed vows a reflection of their journey. "You gave me purpose when I'd lost hope," Ethan said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "Not just a future, but a family. Every day with you and our children is a gift." Aisha's eyes shimmered as she responded. "You trusted me when I was just a cleaner with big ideas," she said, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "Together we've built more than I ever dreamed. This Institute, our kids, our life. You're still the best reckless decision I made." Laughter rippled through the crowd, many knowing the story of the black card that started it all. Lila clapped and Theo gurgled, as if approving, sealing the moment joyfully. The celebration spilled across the grounds with music, food, and tours of the Institute's labs and gardens. Lila, a miniature guide, pointed out her favorite plants to amused guests, while Aisha and Ethan moved among friends, their hands entwined. Later, as the sun dipped low, casting amber light over the statue of hands cradling a plant, a symbol of their mission, they found a quiet moment alone. Lila dozed in Olivia's arms, nearby Theo asleep in his carrier. "Did you ever imagine this?" Aisha asked, leaning against Ethan's shoulder, gazing at the Institute's glowing buildings. "When you were sick, when you gave me that card, did you think we'd end up here?" Ethan shook his head, his arm around her. "I was just trying to stir up chaos before I died," he said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Instead, I found everything worth living for." Aisha's eyes traced the gardens where plants her grandmother had taught her to cherish, now healed countless lives. "From cleaning your floors to building this," she murmured. "Life's strange." Ethan chuckled, his voice warm. "The best kind of strange. You were an overqualified cleaner, and I was a stubborn patient. We made it work." The Institute's impact was undeniable. A recent study published globally validated Aisha's formulas, prompting partnerships with hospitals worldwide. Patients who'd once faced death now wrote letters of gratitude, some displayed in the Institute's halls. The pediatric wing, named for Lila and Theo at Aisha's insistence, symbolized the future, a place where hope would outlive them. "My grandmother would have loved this," Aisha said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "She always said healing comes from the medicine and the heart behind it." Ethan nodded, his hand tightening on hers. "She's part of this, Aisha. Every life we save is her legacy too, and ours." The word "ours" settled between them, a quiet acknowledgement of their shared journey. From a cleaner with a secret to a scientist leading a revolution, from a billionaire facing death to a man embracing life, they defied the odds. The Institute, their children, and their love were a tapestry woven from struggle, trust, and second chances. As stars emerged above, Ethan pulled Aisha close, the music of the celebration fading into the background. "We did more than survive," he said, his voice low, fervent. "We built something that'll last." Aisha smiled, her heart full. "A healing legacy," she said, "for Lila, Theo, and everyone." They stood together, the Institute's gardens stretching before them, a testament to the unlikely pair who'd turned a reckless act into a world-changing triumph. The night deepened, and as the celebration continued, Aisha and Ethan knew their story born from a black card, and a cleaner's courage wasn't an ending, but a beginning. Sometimes the most unexpected cures heal not just bodies but hearts and the world itself.